It's Rock 30, Bill and Jay's excellent podcast, with your hosts, Jay Odom and Billy Quinton. Our special guest this evening is Mike Ritland. Let's roll.
All right, welcome to episode 9 of Rock 30, Bill and Jay's excellent podcast. I'm Billy Quinton.
I am Jay Odom.
And we are very excited to have Mike Ritland join us, former Navy SEAL, currently trains dogs, and not just trains them to sit and roll over, fetch. It's big time.
They do a couple things.
They do a few more things,
yeah.
And it's a great story, great background on what these dogs do, and Mike's past and what he has done and what he's been involved with. And so we're excited to have Mike here. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for
Hitting
having
the
me.
shack from you.
Yeah, amen. He's already in the shack.
Well, I've got a few things I wanted to say about you, which there's so many directions to go. You do so much, which is amazing. But Mike was born and raised in Waterloo, Iowa. After graduation, he headed off to the Navy to serve our country as a Navy SEAL for 12 years. Using his knowledge gained as a SEAL and working with combat canines, he started his own dog company, Tri-Coast International. Company still going strong today, training dogs for basically every government agency from the DHS, DOD, TSA, and Customs Border Protection. He also provides dogs to celebrities and high-wealth private individuals. In 2010, Mike started the Warrior Dog Foundation, discovered that former high-level working dogs were being euthanized when they could no longer serve. Foundation's goal is to prevent euthanization and provide dignity to retired working dogs. The dogs are rehabbed or rehomed when possible, and for others to make them comfortable while bringing them back to health. Mike also started an online dog training program based on his best-selling book, Team Dog, Train the Navy SEAL Way. He has tens of thousands of subscribers and established foundational principles that are essential for all dogs to operate at their optimum level of performance and health. He has dog products with this company, creating his own high-performance dog food, dog treats, and gear. He's a 3 times New York Times best-selling author and has a very successful podcast that you all know. If you don't know it, you need to. It's called Mic Drop. You can find it on YouTube or wherever you download your podcasts. And that's just kind of the tip of the iceberg for you. And I want to start this out by, as we prepared for this, I've been watching, and I've watched your podcast for a while, but I went back through several of these podcasts, and I was telling my wife, I was like, I think you've kind of shaken my identity as what a man is. It's like when I realize the things you've seen, the things you've done, and what you've done for the country. Like, I see myself sitting in front of 2 monitors all day and occasionally get a paper cut.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And it's like, what have I done? And just to read, it's amazing.
I appreciate it. I mean, I will say that obviously I can only speak for myself, but I do feel like a lot of, or I would even say most veterans feel similar in that, being appreciated and having American citizens that are living lives that are warranting of or worthy of a sacrifice is what it's all about, So most veterans, they're honored to be in a position to be able to serve, and saying thank you is certainly nice to hear and always appreciated. But to me, the biggest reason why most veterans serve is to be of service to the great citizens of this country. So it's a give and take for sure.
I want to go back. Let's start at the beginning. You grew up in Waterloo, Iowa.
Yeah.
Tell us about Waterloo.
Yeah.
And just your childhood there. I think you're the first person I first of all met from Waterloo, Iowa, much less Iowa.
I've heard of it. I've heard of Waterloo.
Iowa, I think about as the Field of Dreams.
Yeah.
I know a Field of Dreams
right.
and corn.
Yeah.
And so that's it. So tell us about your childhood growing up there.
Waterloo was a good place to grow up. It's not a tiny town, but it's a smaller town. I mean, it's kind of similar to this area as far as the amount of people and what's available. It's not right next to a huge city like Dallas, obviously. So one of the unique things about Iowa is that, the entire state has about 3 million people. It's actually just shy of 3 million. So there's no real big cities. I mean, even Des Moines, which is the capital and the biggest city, it has I think less than 500,000 people. So there just isn't that hustle and bustle feel really at all in the state. There's no professional sports teams of any sport in the state of Iowa. So you're either piggybacking off of college football or one of the pro teams in the surrounding states. But it's just it's a quiet, relatively sleepy place to grow up, where there's not a ton going on, and it's a relatively slow-paced lifestyle. I would say that the values and kind of morals that are instilled there are kind of similar to as you get further out from Dallas, in some of the more East Texas rural parts. It's pretty similar to there, maybe a little less country, if you will, but very similar types of people. They work farmland and have farms, and just good, honest, hardworking folks that's kind of the culture of the entire state is pretty woven into that fabric of society there. So, I'm glad to have been from there, and I don't know that I'd want to live there now, especially not in the town I grew up in, Waterloo particularly. There are other parts of the state that I would live in, but it's a great place, and I enjoyed being from there. But
other person I just realized was John Wayne from Iowa.
Yeah.
No way.
Marion Morrison back then. And then, high school. You go to high school. Is it Waterloo?
Waterloo West. Yeah, Waterloo West.
Okay.
High
What's
school.
The mascot?
The Wahawks, so like an Indian chief looking guy.
Okay, that's cool.
That's
better
than
our,
the Terriers.
Yeah.
We talked to John Ratcliffe, and they are the Terriers.
That was up in Illinois.
Yeah, I got to give props to Waterloo. There's only there's 3 high schools, 2 public high schools and 1 private Catholic school. And it's the Waterloo West Wahawks, the Waterloo East Trojans, and the Columbus Sailors. So 3 pretty good mascots.
That's good.
Okay.
That's good.
Okay.
So did you play sports in high school?
Yeah, so I played every sport up until high school. Like even at school, I ran track, basketball, football, you name it. Once I got into high school, I just swam. That was kind of the one sport that I started the earliest and was probably the best at. And so I was too small to play football in high school, at least for the first 2 years. And then by then I had just been swimming and focusing on that anyway. So
Did you have a big late growth spurt?
I did. So my freshman and sophomore year, I was really small. I was like 5'4", 105 pounds. Like the first half of high school, and then between sophomore and junior year, I sprouted up to 5'11", and but was still really thin. Like even when I graduated, I weighed like 140. So
good swimmer.
That's good.
Swimmer,
Yeah.
Bill.
Yeah.
Being small reminds me, my son was that way, and I remember the day that he came in. He played sports through JV in high school, and as a sophomore, he came in. Maybe the most excited he's been about anything that he had done at that time. That he was in the back row of the team photo for the first time.
Yeah.
And that was a big deal. That
Sure.
he finally had a little bit of a growth spurt. Dad, I wasn't in the front row. I'm in the back row. I'm like, there you go. It's only downhill from here, my friend.
Yeah.
Mike, one of the things that I read about you that resonated with me, that from coming from you is really interesting too, is that as a young kid, that fear. I remember a fear of being drafted.
Yeah.
And going to war. And it really, it would keep me up at night, and it scared the hell out of me.
Yeah.
But I think the difference, at some point, that changed, obviously, for you. I think to this day, that fear still.
Oh, it's gone through my mind. Like, I think I'm too old to be drafted now.
And
So
now
I think
I think
good.
I
good.
think you're both safe.
I think
We're all
the same
safe.
thing,
We're all safe. at that
Now,
point.
what changed? Like, did you? And I read also, you mentioned in a lot of the things that I've watched and read, Popular Mechanics.
Yeah.
Which I lived for Popular Mechanics.
Yes.
My dad had that magazine every month, man. So you saw something that sparked that.
It was a combination of a few things. So I think where the significant or serious fear of having to fight came from was watching Desert Storm and Desert Shield take place on TV in junior high. I was in 7th grade.
Like 14, 15, 13, 14?
Like 12.
Okay.
And so, for me, like at that point, it was like I was old enough to kind of understand the gravity of what was going on. Unlike the Vietnam War, where yes, there were cameras and reporters there, and that was kind of the first real look into how violent and awful war is. I think for the first time in American history, which is really where our country kind of lost its innocence, was during Vietnam, of seeing both sides of it, and it made a lot of people, kind of counter warfare, and or just against, going to war in any capacity. But so fast forward, 15, 20 years, and now you've got the Gulf War, where there's better camera technology, there's satellite feeds where we're getting like real-time footage of bombing runs and anti-aircraft artillery or pieces shooting, tracers up into the sky and trying to shoot our jets down, and seeing tanks that have been blown up by our A-10s. And for me, it was just like, holy shit, like, this is real, this isn't a movie, whatever. And so I hadn't even gone through puberty yet, but I was old enough to kind of understand what was taking place, and it was scary, and so I was just like, holy shit, I hope I never have to get drafted. Just a few years later, as I started to kind of come into my own, coupled with the high school that I went to was not a great high school to go through high school in. I mean, it was like I said, my overall childhood was great. Family was amazing. Parents were fantastic. The high school was a pretty shitty experience.
How come?
It was a big, busy. It was about almost 3,000 kids, which
Wow.
compared to the schools here is not that big, but that's pretty
not
fucking
a
good
small-
size.
That's about the size they are now.
Rockwell
both
High
of the high schools here.
Schools,
Yeah.
But so I think it was 2,500, between 2,500 and 3,000. Anyway, it was a big school, and it was pretty racially charged at that time. This was the early to mid 90s, where you had Rodney King stuff going on. You had some Malcolm X kind of style movements that were taking place.
OJ was
The OJ verdict.
Yeah.
So there were some tumultuous things taking place in our society that kind of bled over into our school, and Waterloo is kind of two sides of a town split by a river. Basically, you've got the Cedar River running right through the town. You've got the west side and the east side, west high, east high. West side is predominantly white. The east side is predominantly black. Not on purpose. It just, I think, kind of happened that way. And segregation wasn't ever a thing in Iowa. But so back in the late '80s, early '90s, I think the school administration kind of decided that they were going to bus kids from each side over to the other side and try to mix it up a little bit, and that turned out about like you'd expect. And so it was a pretty racially divided school, and kind of a hotbed for shitty scenarios. And so our high school was, I think it was around 40% black population. The rest was mostly white, and then vice versa on the east side. And it didn't go well. There were a number of kind of big racial riots that took place during my high school, and there was a few different times where I got the shit beat out of me. And so for me, that was really impactful as far as that fear turning into wanting to do something about it. As I was, going through puberty and small and getting beat up, and then, I hit this growth spurt and think, I want to go do something with, with my life. And there was a period of time between, the Gulf War and getting jumped and all that, where I felt not defenseless, but almost defenseless. And that was very impactful for me in terms of wanting to now turn into somebody that would defend the defenseless, if that makes sense. And so I wanted to join the military. I had always looked fondly on it, just talking to both of my grandfathers were in World War II, one in the Army, one in the Navy. And it was very inspirational for me just from a service standpoint. I always loved hearing them talk about it and would always ask them a lot of questions. And I was just into World War II history, military history, American history as it relates to the military, and so it was something that I thought was really, really neat and wanted to be a part of. But then all of those things kind of came together, and so one thing I've always tried to let guide my decision-making process is getting the most bang for your buck. And so, for me, I thought, if I'm going to join the military, how can I make the biggest impact for or in relation to the reason that I'm joining? And from my perspective, I had spent my entire childhood swimming and being in the water. I thought being in special operations would be most bang for your buck, impactful wise. So joining the SEAL teams made sense. At that same time, because I saw and read an article in Popular Mechanics kind of introducing them to me, as well as seeing the movie Navy SEALs with Charlie Sheen.
Yeah.
I then kind of went and found every book that I could. This is, the mid-'90s or early '90s, so obviously, watching shit on YouTube and streaming things on the internet wasn't a thing. So, I read a couple of Vietnam-era SEAL books that were really impactful, and, watching the couple of movies, there were some workout videos by some former SEALs that like SEAL prep videos that I got a hold of and started doing those workouts, and then just kind of decided like this is what I want to do, and joined, and kind of never really looked back. So I was pretty singular focused. Around junior year is when I first started to think about it. By the end of my junior year, I was singularly focused. At that same time, I also linked up with a martial arts studio that was pretty ahead of its time. It was run and owned by this very small in stature woman, but was an absolute firecracker when it came to fighting. She was a really, really tough gal and very good at it was based off of Okinawan karate, but it was very MMA-like in terms of her incorporating wrestling, boxing, stick fighting, knife fighting, Thai boxing, kickboxing, you name it, mixing and blending a lot of other things so that it wasn't just singular kind of traditional karate. And I spent a few years doing that, where we would spar full contact with, like, there were some sheriff deputies in the class, and other, grown fucking men, like having to put pads on as a 16, 17-year-old, and full contact spar sheriff deputies and things like that was good for me. And that also kind of helped put all of those things together to really want to be singularly focused into joining the SEAL teams.
So that leads me then to you join the Navy, and from what I read, you go straight to boot camp, and you get awarded the Trident. Kind of explain what the Trident is.
So the Trident didn't come until several years later. So the Trident is the SEAL insignia that you're awarded, that says you are awarded the Naval Enlisted Classification Code, or NEC code, of 5326, which means you're a SEAL now. But you have to go through boot camp. Now there's like a BUDS prep course that's a couple months still there at Great Lakes. Then you go out to Coronado to the NSWC, the center it's called, and you go through all of BUDS, go through jump school, and you go through SEAL qualification training, which is another 3.5, almost 4 months. And then from there, then you are joined into one of the SEAL teams and awarded your Trident. It was a little different when I went through. Back then, you went through BUDS, jump school, SQT, and then you went to your team, and you had to go on a 6-month probation there, where you basically had to prove yourself to all of the existing SEAL team members, which is pretty intimidating, especially for an 18, 19-year-old. But so you show up, and you're basically just, the cabin boy for 6 months, and you get fucked with nonstop. And
tell us what Hell Week is. We hear a lot about Hell Week.
Yeah.
You know what this is?
Yeah, so Hell Week is the 4th or 5th week in SEAL training, or in BUDS, and it's a 6-day process. It starts Sunday afternoon and goes till Friday dinner time. And in that entire period of time, you only get 2.5 hours of sleep for the entire time. You're up the whole rest of the time, and it's nonstop, surf torture, running with logs on your head, running with boats on your head, buddy carries, rolling around in the sand, getting, shot at with blanks, and
like at all hours.
Yeah, I mean it's nonstop. And the instructor staff, because the last 3.5 years I was a SEAL instructor, and so I got to see the other side of that and put kids through Hell Week, which was really neat to be on both sides of it, but. What's interesting is, in Hell Week, there's 3 shifts. There's 3 8-hour shifts of instructors. So as a student, you're going nonstop. Every 8 hours, you get a fresh batch of dickheads in that come in full of piss and vinegar to level you. And of course, the first couple hours they're on, they're full steam ahead, and they start to wear out. And I will say, as an instructor, it was every bit as exhausting, because you have to maintain this, like, 11 out of 10 level of intensity for 8 hours straight, whereas a student, you're just kind of surviving. But, every 8 hours there's a fresh batch. And so it's relentless. It's nonstop 24/7 of just getting your dick kicked in. And the goal is to weed out the people that want to be there or not.
Sure.
Were you ever like, I don't think I can make it. This is it.
I never was. No,
You were good.
No, I never was. And I, for me, I've heard, interviews with other guys that, some people say, like, anybody who says they never thought about quitting is lying. Like, I never seriously thought about it. No, like I never once was like, man, I don't think this is for me. From my standpoint, if you get to that point, there's no coming back from it. So I would kind of say, in the other vein, like, if you ever seriously think about quitting, you're not going to make it. As an instructor, I saw that. Like, you can see in a student when the wheels are turning and when they're thinking about it. I mean, like, body language wise, it's plain as fucking day. And in every single instance, there's not a single time where I ever saw a kid where I was like, that motherfucker's going to quit. That he didn't,
Wow.
Because you can just tell. You can see they're looking around, and there's just subtle, nuanced body line, like nonverbal cues that they give off that they don't want to be here anymore. Once you get to that point, I mean, I've seen staff, even myself, would try to get guys to stay in, be like, hey man, you got this much time left, you can do it, just put your head down, doesn't matter, they quit. On the same token, for the guy that absolutely will not fucking stop, you can tell him, hey, this hell week's different, we're going to be going for 9 days. Doesn't matter. Like, he's like, well, I don't give a shit. I'm not going to quit. It's like, the power of the mind is everything. I mean, your ability to use your mind to get through things is more powerful than anything your body will ever come up with. So,
and I have something similar. Sometimes I've had to work in Adobe Illustrator. I'm a graphic designer, and I don't have the updated version. And I got to go with an outdated version. And it is
You're
hell.
probably thinking,
yeah.
can
I'm
I
like, man,
handle
I
this?
can't do this. I can't do this. But I find something deep in me, and I continue
And
on.
you were
I
able to-
continue on.
No,
you know what I'm talking about.
I do.
Yeah,
It's very. Is all that stuff we see on TV getting held up underwater, almost passing out or passing out? Is that real?
it is. I mean, I will say it's not quite. There's not an intentional, let's try to drown these guys for the most part. There is one.
For the most part.
Well,
You get an instructor that every once in a while likes to do that, or
no, I mean, it sounds bad. No, I mean, so there's two particular blocks of training that just kind of by design lend themselves to that happening. There are actually three, I guess. One of them is knot tying, which that's in first phase, where you go down to a 15-foot section, and there's a series of 5 different knots. You've got this little line of rope, and there's a long line of rope at the very bottom of the pool deck that you have to swim down there, tie one knot. The instructor comes down, inspects the knot, says, yeah, it's okay or not. He gives you the okay, so the process is you go down, you tie the knot, you give the okay signal. The instructor comes down, he looks at the knot. If it's right, he gives you the okay signal. You untie the knot. As soon as it's untied and it's off the line, then you give the thumbs up to go up, and he gives you the thumbs up to go up, and then you can go up. So, of course, the instructors are on a snorkel, so they're up there breathing while you're down there tying the knot, and so as soon as you finish and they give the okay, then they take a huge breath, come down, and they take their sweet fucking time inspecting it, and they'll fuck with you, where, like, they'll look at it and kind of, do this and look at it, and you're sitting there
and you're like,
oh, yeah, like you start doing the funky chicken, like, like the type of noise, and they know it, they were students once too.
That's part of it.
And so they're looking at it really fucking slow, and then they'll be like, give you a really slow okay, and then you untie it real quick, and then you're giving the thumbs up, and a lot of times, like, they'll just sit there and they'll give you the thumb, and they'll do this and just like stare at you. And knowing that, like, you're sitting there, like, your eyes are huge and your throat's fucking convulsing, and they just, and then they'll be like, and then they give it to you, and you bolt up to the top and whatever. And so in those instances, sometimes kids will fucking pass out.
Wow.
Shallow water blackout. And
Wow.
is that considered as an instructor like
no.
faulty?
No.
Not going to work.
No.
Okay.
I would think if they
No,
passed out, they're really.
No, it's the opposite.
I mean,
Yeah.
they are going
Yeah,
to
they're
Yeah,
the.
all
it's like
in.
because it's not uncommon in that scenario for the kid to just bolt and break protocol, and in that
is
case, then they're like,
pushing
hey,
it to the absolute.
for sure. And they do a 50-meter underwater swim where you have to jump in the pool, do a front flip, and not push off from the wall. So, as you know, like if you do a somersault in the water, you blow out about half your fucking lung capacity when you do that. So, jump in, do a front flip, and then start swimming, and you have to do 50 meters underwater. That's one of them. There's the knot tying. There's drown proofing, where they tie your hands behind your back and shackle your feet together, and you have to spend like
Psychological.
like 7 minutes in the water tied up, where you're doing a series of bobbing and floating and traveling, and again, it's very particular in terms of the protocol. If you break it or fuck it up, you fail, and if you fail that so many times, they'll kick you out. There's life-saving, which is where the instructors will put like a dive weight belt on or body armor, and they'll throw all their clothes on and boots, and they're flailing in the deep end, and you have to go in and save them. So they teach you these, life-saving techniques, which is
Do they fight you?
Oh, they fucking beat your ass, really.
And you're still there to save them.
Yeah, so and to be fair though, like in that scenario, that's usually what happens. Like when somebody's drowning and they're panicking, like they'll claw your face, they'll fucking punch you in the nuts, not on purpose, but they're not easy to save. Like they don't just compliantly lay there and let you save them. So of course they use that also as an opportunity. Like, and again, from having been an instructor, you may be like, Smith, motherfucker, you get in my line because he doesn't like this kid. So, like they know, the students are getting in, like, God damn it. And so, they go in there, they swim there, and it's like you come up and the dude just goes boom and just like elbows you in the face to start it, or like grabs you by the waist and yanks you under the water. I mean, and just is a total fucking nightmare to try to save. But,
Ooh. Oh, man. It reminds me so much of art school. It's just so weird.
all three of those exercises are in first phase. The next phase, second phase, which is diving phase, that's where there's a week it's called pool week, but there's two exercises during that week that are, I would say, the most precarious for potential drowning, which is the treading of water with twin 80s. So you got the twin 80 tanks on your back. You get in the water and you have to tread for 5 minutes with your hands up out of the water with those tanks on your back.
So it's all legs.
It's all legs. And so even like the best swimmers there struggle with it. The guys who are mediocre usually will go under several times. I mean, it's just a gut check where, they're seeing if you'll put out a maximum effort even when you feel like you're drowning. And so some guys will fail that even to the point where they get dropped from training even then. And then the last exercise of pool week is called pool competency or pool comp, which that's where it's the diciest. So now you've got the twin 80s on your back. You're crawling around in the 8-foot section with a blacked out. They put black tape all over a mask, and so you're crawling completely in the blind. And with the twin 80s, it's scuba, where we use the Mark V or the LAR 5 breathers. The rebreathers, which is pure oxygen on this little self-contained. That's when, if we're doing combat diving, we use those. So there's no bubbles, but in the initial training phase, we're using the scuba tanks. And so you're crawling around on the bottom, and there's a series of knots, basically, not knots, I would say there's a series of problems that the instructors inflict on the students, and it starts pretty mild, where you're crawling around, and again, like you can't see anything. So you're crawling 8 feet of water, you're breathing on a scuba rig, and they'll come down and knock your mask off, rip your mouthpiece out, and maybe push you, down into the ground a little bit. And so
These guys sound like assholes, man.
Well, I mean, keep in mind, there's two things. Number one is that the entire purpose of SEAL training is to do really just one thing. It's a selection process. It's to remove all of the people that when you're overseas and you're required to do horrible things to horrible people, you need a certain type of individual that can operate in that environment, be comfortable, and be violent when they need to be violent. And no amount of environmental stress, no amount of mental stress, no amount of physical stress, even when all three of them are unbearable, that person still won't crack, will still make the right decision under all of that pressure and not fucking give up.
And have your back.
Yeah, and so
That's what you-
and so all of those instructor cadre, when you're seeing, a sea of 20-year-old kids that come in that say, I want to be like you, in the back of our mind or even in the front of our mind, all of these guys are potential future teammates. So there's a zero chance that the staff is going to let any one of these dickheads give them an ounce of breathing room. Like, you're absolutely going to earn your spot. If you're going to come be one of us, you're going to fucking prove it 1,000 times over the next 6 months. And like, I'm not putting my life or any of my buddies' lives on the line to let this fucking slip knot fall through the cracks. I'm not doing it, So it's not about being a dick or being hard on people just for the sake of being hard on them. It's saying, if you're going to come, if I'm going to come trust you with explosives and a sniper rifle over my shoulder or clearing a house with you behind me, you better be a stand-up motherfucker, and I'm not giving you an ounce of slack. You better prove it, So that's really what it's all about. But so that's kind of step one in the pool comp, and it just gets worse from there. So
that's the easy part.
Well, it just, like, they ramp it up a notch, for the next 5 iterations, it just gets worse. So, they'll knock your mask off, they'll pull your mouthpiece out, and then they'll take those tubes and tie it in an overhand knot and then push you on the ground. And so now you got to reach back and unfuck that knot. But and so those knots get harder and harder to untie each repetition, and they basically go until they make sure that they bundle it up in such a fashion where you cannot undo it. So if you keep undoing it, which I've seen guys do, and it's actually counterproductive for guys to be too good at untying they call it the whammy knot. Because if you untie it, they're just going to tie it again worse, So
you don't want to be too fast at it.
No, I mean, you want to be there's no penalty for undoing it fast, but they want to see you try to undo it for 20 or 30 seconds. If you can't, at that point, there's a very, very specific procedure that they want you to do to get all of your equipment off, and it has to be in perfect order. And at this point, you've been without a breath for 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes. And one of the other trick fuck things that they do is, because it's an open circuit, you can see when somebody's exhaling. There's a huge stream of bubbles that come up. So usually they'll see that huge stream, and at the end of it, yank your mouthpiece out now when you just exhaled a full fucking breath. So now you just blew all of the air out of your lungs. Now you're without a mouthpiece, and then they're fucking with it. Then you're fucking with it, and at this point, okay, I can't do it. So now you give them the thumbs up. They tap your hand, which means you go through your procedure, and so you go through all of the shit. And if you have one fucking step that's out of order, you fail. And it's stuff like your weight belt has to come off first. And I don't even remember what the procedure is, but it's this specific where it's like you have to take your right hand and put and hold the clasp open like this, and then take the slack with your left hand, pull it with both hands around your waist, and set it down on the ground completely straight. And like each thing that you take off your body has to be in that order. If you fuck one of those steps up, you fail. But at this point, you can't see. You've been without air for 2 fucking minutes. You're panicky, and you have to be calm enough to say, okay, I need to remember to do this, 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 and this. And again, none of it is about who gives a shit what order you take it off. It's when you honestly think you might fucking drown, and you're as panic-stricken without air as you can possibly be. Can you make yourself stay calm enough to follow really fucking specific instructions in that environment? That's what they're looking for. It doesn't have shit to do with anything else. It's that environment is incredibly stressful because you're underwater with no air and you can't see. So if you pass that, then you move on and you go. But I've seen guys, I was fortunate enough to pass that. I won't say easily, but I passed it the second time I did it. And but I have seen guys that were dropped from training because they just couldn't pass that test. But
okay, and the thing I think we need to understand is almost everything that we do, almost everybody has rules and limitations. We always like, well, they can't do this, and you're dealing with something. There are no rules.
No, there are rules.
But I mean, like, you don't want to go to combat and like, okay, nobody told me he's going to take my mask off. I wasn't ready for that. Yeah. You got to be ready for
anything.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, you've got to be able to deal with anything.
Yeah.
Within that there are parameters. Even as an instructor, there are rules that have to be followed. There's things you can do.
No, I'm
things
talking
you
about
can
when
do.
you get into combat. There's no.
No, for sure, there's none.
And that's what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
in the training,
they're pushing the envelope all the time.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that's the whole point of it. Is,
For sure.
And we don't have that in anything else we do, or most things we do.
Right.
You get to a certain point, and you're like, okay, we can't go any
just-
further or do whatever. And
There's nothing that us guys in the regular world can even start to relate. And I know this to what you've seen and what you've done. That's and it's so easy to talk about war and what happens.
when you watch movies, you
Well,
feel like you know everything.
No, I mean, I would say that a lot of first responders go through very similar stuff as far as
Trauma.
EMTs is kind of a different thing. It's not that it's not dangerous, it is, but it's they see a lot of really horrible shit.
Yeah.
Which has a negative impact on you and is something that most people can't deal with. Law enforcement on every level, whether it's local, state, federal, you name it, especially beat cops in shitty neighborhoods or big cities that are shitty. Like those guys are going through all the same stuff. They're and to me, like there's an element of that I think is worse. Like, yes, when we're overseas, you're dealing against guys, that are shooting at you with belt-fed machine guns that have explosives, that have IEDs, that have fucking rockets, that if they catch you, they're going to cut your fucking head off on camera and send it to your family. Like it's the magnitude is worse, but you get to come home from that. Cops that go out
Right.
a shift every day, like they're going and sometimes going against mafia members or gangbangers or fucking cartel members. A lot of border towns are dealing with some pretty gnarly fucking dudes, and they're having to deal with all that same shit. There's different jobs, I mean, that that are excruciatingly tough and super dangerous. That to me, it's kind of all relative. I mean, there are a lot of hard men out there. There are a lot of tough jobs out there, and yes, while the overwhelming majority, percentage-wise, of our population aren't those people. Excuse me. Try to. Looked like
Good
a fucking
save,
moron
good
trying to sneeze.
Was that part of the training? Can you hold a sneeze?
It's not supposed to be. But I guess it's.
How great would it be if he said, I never passed the sneeze part
It got
of
to
the
the
training.
sneeze, and that's when I dropped out. Yeah.
Okay, so you're a Navy SEAL for 12 years.
Yeah.
And then I want to talk a little bit
And including
about
an instructor for how long?
3.
3 years as an
And
instructor.
going back real quick, when you were asked, was there ever any thought of, I don't really want to do that? Or you jumped right in?
The instructor part?
Yeah.
I mean, it was kind of a strange situation as to how it happened. So I got valley fever. Right when I got back from Iraq, I went to do an advanced training stint teaching desert warfare to the SEAL qualification students. Excuse me. I've already been talking for like 5 hours today, so my throat's a little shot, but.
Well, we only plan on going like another 5, so you should be good.
You're
fine.
good.
Yeah.
So I ended up losing almost half my lung capacity permanently. They tried to medically retire me. I had no college degree. I hadn't planned on getting out. First child was on the way, and I was like, holy shit! What am I going to do if I get medically retired? It's not enough to live off of. So basically, 2 Master Chiefs just made a deal and said, hey, you're at advanced training. Let's send you to Buds, and we'll take one of their guys. And so that's how I ended up there. I was at advanced training as an instructor, which, to your question, no, there was like when they said, hey, this bill had opened up. Do you want to take it? I said, yeah, I'd love to, and I did. And so it was kind of that same thing, but I ended up on the basic side because of a lung disease. But
I want to go. I watched one of the podcasts. I think you were a guest on this podcast, and I can't remember which one it was. But you talked about, I believe you had one of your missions was to guard the USS Cole.
Yeah.
When for those that don't remember, the Cole was attacked. It was before 9/11. It was one of the big terrorist attacks that I think a lot of people remember, where they blew a big hole in the side of it and all that. Number of
You were one of
servicemen
the
were killed.
first that came up onto that.
So if you could tell us a little bit about that, and then you led into a story that has fascinated me ever since I've seen it about, and I don't know if it happened at this, mission, but the dolphins the attack dolphins, and that's nuts to me that I want to go into also.
Yeah.
That is crazy. But tell us about what your role was in the USS Cole and guarding that.
yeah, so we were on deployment when it happened. We were in Bahrain actually. We had just rode a guided missile cruiser from Australia to Bahrain. So we were in Bahrain where our sister platoon was located for deployment. We had planned on just doing a lot of cross training with them and a lot of the kind of host nation forces in the area. The Cole got hit, so we jumped on the USS Tarawa and steamed down there and got there, fairly quick. And then basically from sundown to sunup every night for 63 days, we guarded that ship from being taken over / attacked again, because the goal for Al-Qaeda was to sink it, not just to disable it. And because they were quick enough with all of their damage control protocols, they managed to keep it from sinking, which pissed them off. And so all of the terrorist assholes in that area at that time, like, were open source threatening, saying, like, that ship's not leaving the harbor, we're going to fucking sink it. And they, probed a few times while we were there, and nothing significant ever really happened. But it was, it was a damaged ship that killed 19 sailors, who of which were still in the boat that was disabled, and it was, in 90-degree water in the middle of, basically right on the equator. So it doesn't matter what time of year it is. It was hot and salty water and humid, and it was fucking horrible. But
and you talked about the temperatures were ungodly. While you
yeah, they were terrible, and it's a disabled ship, so there's no air conditioning. And it's in a metal hulled, metal skinned, metal walled boat sitting in the sun and hot water for 2 months with dead bodies and rotting food in the galley, and it was pretty gnarly. But we managed to get it out to sea and load it up onto a floating dry dock, and then they brought it back to Mississippi and rebuilt the whole thing, and it went back out to sea after that. But
and then I don't think it was during this time, but you talked about the dolphins, and that was it Iranians that had these, and I know the U.S. Navy has them too, right? Don't they use these dolphins? And try to explain what that is.
Yeah, any dolphin stuff, experience-wise for me, has only been on the United States side.
Okay.
I have not had any interaction with any other country's marine mammal program. And
I'd read that, like, Iran had bought some that were trained from Russia and all these things. So we know our enemies have them. But go ahead and explain how we use these.
What do these dolphins do?
Dude, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Well, I don't know how much I said on whatever show you saw it on. I do have to be a little careful with how much I talk about it. But I'll just say that the gist is that we have a capability of using dolphins to find enemy combatants. Should they be diving in our harbors where there are Navy assets located, there are a multitude of different anti-swimmer or anti-diver attack protocols, dolphins being one of them. And so they're trained to go find people who are diving and attack them. Basically.
Yeah, they have like things on their nose that they can puncture them with, like C4 or something like that.
It's not an explosive. Again,
and you probably can't go into detail.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say they have an ability to incapacitate.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but they're like super intelligent, of course, and I think they also said that, like, there's a certain seal they can use too that have the intelligence to do it. But I just thought it was fascinating. It was like Austin Powers stuff. It was greatness.
Sharks with laser beams.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Mike, moving into, shortly after that was 9/11. Where were you? What were you doing, and what did, in your head, what was swirling around?
So I was at SEAL Team 3 when 9/11 happened. I had gotten back from that USS Cole deployment around Valentine's Day, and they were doing this big reshuffle of all of the commands and how they were organizing them in terms of deployments. And so we ended up kind of getting caught in this like holding pattern for the rest of that year. Basically, we got back in February, and we weren't starting our next platoon workup until that following January. So we kind of all went 3 sheets to the wind and went to different schools and did different things. I actually joined the Navy pentathlon team for a season right after that deployment, and was on the pentathlon team for that season. It ended in mid to late summer, and then I went to a couple different schools, and then there's this big exercise in Jordan that was being planned. 9/11 happened, so I was a couple months from jumping into another platoon and starting to work up. But for really myself and for all of us, I was on my way to work, as it was happening, because we were out on the West Coast. So, I'm driving there, hearing about it on the radio. We get in, and just like everything changed. It was like flipping on a light switch of in terms of the intensity with which we were our understanding of now what we were going to do. It's not that we weren't ready to go to war or that we hadn't been doing things that were real world before that, but now obviously this is very different. So it just it was a stark and sobering reality of why we do what we do, and we knew we were going to be busy for a long fucking time.
And correct me if I'm wrong, this was like we had terrorist attacks before, but it always seemed to me it was against military.
Or
we had
embassies
Beirut and embassies or the Cole, USS Cole. This is the first time that U.S. citizens in our territory, and that was a whole, as you know,
as a game changer.
As a game changer, yeah.
One of the things I just finished this book, and I know you've got 3 New York Times bestseller books, which I always wonder if I had that at restaurants and they're like, name please, I would have to say New York Times bestseller J.O. do you ever pull that out? Okay, you don't do that. But and so
can we do that then? Can we just use it? Okay,
sure.
thank you.
You
so
do whatever you want.
This is the book I started with, and I think it was the title that intrigued me.
Yeah.
This is Mike Ritland, Unfuck America.
Yeah.
A respectful, open-minded conversation. Yeah. I read it, and I was gonna make a few notes to talk about, but I may just need to read the whole thing.
You highlighted every page, Jay, and I think you defeated the purpose.
Mike, I really enjoyed it. It was readable for dumbasses like me.
I appreciate it.
But there were so many great points in this crazy world, and it was fair and it was open. And one of the things that popped out at first for me was this PC stuff. And I was wondering, how do you see, even within the military and specifically the Navy SEALs, we've got women who, has there been a woman Navy SEAL yet?
No.
How do you feel about that?
I think it's a mistake. I don't think it's a mistake to have or allow, from an opportunity standpoint, women to be in special operations to a certain extent. What I do have an issue with is the commingling of men and women in special operations. So instead of having women try to be SEALs, I think we should entertain / create a all-female special operations unit. Doesn't matter what branch they're with. Maybe the Army, since they're kind of the big green machine, and maybe would have the best resources. Maybe the Air Force. I don't know. That's for the SOCOM generals to figure out. But to me, there's too much biology and science that goes against any potential upside to having women serve in special operations units with all-male units that have existed for decades. It's a bad scenario. I mean, I can tell you just from having been on deployment, when you've got a group of 16 AA personality dudes in the prime of their life that are going over and expected to enact violence on America's enemies, and they're isolated for months at a time, and then now all of a sudden, like, they go to a different FOB or a different base of some kind, and there's some intel chick with a ponytail and eyeliner on. Like, it's like throwing a fucking chicken in a pool of alligators. Like, it's fucking stupid.
And that's what I mean. To say that is controversial.
I don't give a shit.
But I get the idea. You really don't give a fuck.
I don't give a fuck. I mean,
okay, I love that. But we've been fighting each other for so long. One of the things that really caught my attention, which I think is important, is listen to understand, not to respond.
100%.
And if necessary, have the balls to change your mind. We don't like to change our mind.
No, that means we've wasted our time with the other beliefs.
No, and so, like, with what I just said, if somebody could, with some sort of scientific backed or empirical data, say it does make sense for women to be in special forces, and here are several studies that show why, and by why, that means that by having women in special operations, traditional male already existing special operations, that at the end of the day you can say that this made them a better war-fighting unit, then I'm all for it. So if you can show and prove that, I'm happy to change my tune on that. I will say that you're not going to be able to do that, but if you can, I'm open to hear it.
Another thing going along with PC that caught my attention, and it surprised me, is you felt pressure from your uppers as you were an instructor to make sure there were more minorities, men chosen.
Yeah. A little bit.
I mean, that's shocking to me. It was not necessarily the best guys.
I mean, I would say that at least at that time. Now, keep in mind, this was '05 to '08. So I will say how things are now are quite a bit different than from even when I was in. And not for the better. It's way, way fucking worse as far as stuff like that goes. But I will say this. My time in, there was never a, hey, guys, let's get together. Make this happen. It was never anything like that.
We need 4 black guys. We need 2 Hispanic.
No, for sure. It was never that out in the open. It was more of a suggestion, like, hey, it'd sure be nice if it was one of those. It wasn't like we're mandating you will get 5 Asians through training this year. Like, there was never any of that, ever.
Did you ever put a minority in a spot that you might not have without that pressure?
No, I never did. And I would say I don't think any of my other fellow cadre members did either, at least not then. I will say, the gatekeeper mentality of the staff there, irrespective of what the rules are, what's mandated by whatever the leadership comes down with, at least while I was there, and the entire time I was in, everybody I ever knew that played a role as an instructor never really followed any of that shit. Now, I can't speak to that how it is now. It wouldn't surprise me if it's very different now, unfortunately.
Looking at your beliefs, I read some on your beliefs. You obviously, I read and I wrote it down, consider yourself very conservative, but many beliefs you have could be considered non-conservative. You're pro-choice, pro-gay marriage, pro-legalization of drugs. But in that conservative point, you want small government and for them to basically leave us alone and stay as small as intended. I'm with you on most of those. The only thing I disagree is the pro-choice, but I have my own personal background and why I feel the other way. But I'm very much I'm a Christian. I have my beliefs. I have the way I feel things are right and wrong. But that doesn't necessarily mean that guy needs to believe the way I do. Yeah. And I'm very much you do your thing, I do my thing, as long as it doesn't affect me or anybody like that. Yeah. Is that kind of your philosophy?
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't like to put myself or be put in any specific box, but I mean, if I had to slap a label on who I am politically, it would be more independent or libertarian than it would be right or left. There are things that I feel passionately or strongly about that align with every side, frankly. And I'm there with you. Like, I just want to be left alone, and I want people to generally be able to do whatever they want.
And in this book, really the gist of this gets broken down into these 4 points, which I think is great. You called it the 4 cornerstone principles that's used to guide for assessing and approaching important subject matters. And I love this. It was step 1, remove emotions.
Which is hard for everybody.
Yes, it is.
You mentioned a time that was really tough for you to remove those emotions regarding, was it some attacks on military guys or something where you were like, wait a minute, I've gotten super emotional on this,
Well, so I think what's being referenced there is the kneeling for the flag.
That's it. That's what it was. Games. And emotion immediately hits you.
Yeah, and so my instant reaction is that's fucking bullshit. And then if you hit the pause button and remove the emotion, if I can level myself for a minute and say, okay, why am I this upset about it? There's a reason why. Okay, so you got to remove that. And now say, okay, just because I don't like it doesn't mean that it should be illegal when it's not hurting anybody. Like, does it piss me off? Yes. Do I think it's disrespectful? Absolutely. Do I think they should be doing it? Fuck no, I don't.
Yeah.
However, that's when it's the most important to remove emotion and allow things that you don't like or agree with to take place, because that really is the cornerstone of free speech.
And step 2, remove politics.
Which is also
that's tough too.
Equally difficult.
Step 3, mind your own fucking business.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which you've got a chapter in here about Karens, which I love. And finally, and this is the big one, hold yourself to the same or higher standard that you hold others to.
Yeah.
And that's really your step on how do we deal with these issues like immigration,
everything.
All of it.
Everything. I mean, to me, that's a good starting point to at least enter into any discussion about any subject where you're at least, if both sides enter in, checking those 4 boxes, you have the highest percentage chance of coming to some sort of agreement or solution. It's not a guarantee, but to me, it's going to give you the best shot at it.
And I think a lot of times we get caught up in winning the argument or winning the opinion battle, and that's where you're like,
That's Twitter.
anytime if you're competitive, I'm going to pull from everything I can to win this one, even though it may not be the right way to do it. And you're right with the emotion. There's nothing that bothered me more than the kneeling during the national anthem. But then I started listening. It's hard. You start listening. Okay, I didn't see it from that angle. I didn't grow up the way that guy grew up, or I didn't deal with what that guy dealt with. Now, is this the best way to fight it? I didn't think so, but I understood.
Yeah, I
mean,
to me, like, you don't even have to understand. It's the mind your own fucking business is really what it mostly boils down to. But it's, to me, the I would say the disease of us having to win. It goes way beyond Twitter or X, social media. I mean, look at our politicians. They're the most guilty of it. I mean, they will absolutely destroy their country if it means this side got the win. I don't give a fuck how bad it is. If we can beat the other side, we'll do it. You're seeing it take place constantly right now.
And in law enforcement, district attorneys, they decide someone's guilty. Whatever it takes.
Yeah, and with that, from a criminal justice standpoint, like, one of the institution's biggest problems is using a success metric in terms of how many cases are won by district attorneys, by criminal prosecutors. Like, that's the litmus for he's the best lawyer because he has a high conviction rate.
Right.
Like, to me, that shouldn't fucking matter.
It's a score, like your baseball score for the season. Or, they're keeping
because
track.
the second that's the priority, now justice isn't the fucking priority. It's putting somebody in jail. So they don't give they give less of a fuck about whether or not that guy's actually guilty. It's, if I'm bringing charges, motherfucker, I need to convict him or my percentage drops and I look like a shitty lawyer.
We look at that
with huge problem.
Everything. It's resume building. I got to have this on my resume, whatever it is, whatever job I have. When I taught for a little bit, I taught for 3 years, and it was always a high, oh man, look at all these kids that passed in this class. Well, passing wasn't the most important thing. You can always pass kids. Are they learning? Are they benefiting? Does this kid really need to come back next year because it takes him a couple years to learn this or retake it or whatever? And we do. We put these weird, labels on these things. Quickly, I want to turn the table on you real quick. We're going to continue going there, but I want to, for now, I watch your podcast. You have some great questions, and we're going to do some quick fire here.
You call it the Quickfire round.
Yeah.
Lightning round.
The lightning round.
And you asked some great questions, so I'm going to ask you some of those.
Sure.
If time travel was available, when and where would you go?
So for me, I would go back to there's a couple of periods. I mean, do you want me to pick one or?
No, give me both.
I mean, to me, the World War II generation is romanticized, and I think for a reason. To me, I would have loved to have served during that time. That would be my number one pick. I also would love to have seen what's going on, like at the height of the Egyptian, we'll call it an empire days, watching pyramids be built, just seeing what culture and what daily life was like then, and also during like the Roman Empire at the height of its, seeing like.
And the fall.
The architecture, and I'd rather skip the fall of it, honestly.
but I mean, the fall is what's so amazing for those that think
I think you're seeing it with America right now. But
if you think America can't fall, just look
for
at
sure.
that.
Yeah, for sure it can. Again, if I can travel, I'm going to hit the highlights. I don't want to see the disaster.
Yeah.
So
not necessarily the Holocaust.
You had a guest recently that I thought was interesting. When you asked him that question, he said, "I wanted to go back a couple weeks."
Yeah.
And he wanted just to change the feel. I thought, man, that's pretty good.
That would work.
Yeah.
That would work.
He talked about, "I want to go here, and we can cure cancer if we could done this or whatever."
Well, one said, "I want to go a couple years in the future and do the Back to the Future sports almanac.
Yes.
Come back and now be
that,
fucking
yeah.
loaded."
I've always said
that was great.
Well, and if you ever heard Nate Bargatze, he's a great comedian. He said if he ever went back in time, he goes, he'd be the one guy that I'd be telling people, "Oh no, we have these phones that you can do everything." And they said, "Really? How's it work?" I don't know. I really don't know.
Could you imagine showing this phone to somebody even 30 years ago?
Right.
It's crazy.
Spirit animal. What's your spirit animal?
Jaguar.
Okay, that's good.
Mm.
Yeah, mine's the banana slug, which is kind of weird. Okay, in high school, were you a good student?
No.
Okay.
I wasn't terrible, but I wasn't good.
Okay.
I mean, mostly I just didn't care. So I guess that would make me a bad student. But
Did you have a lot of friends?
Not a lot. I mean, I had a small group of close friends. I was kind of a gray man in high school. Like I wasn't. I mean, I was athletic enough to, I'm not going to say like be a jock, but I was varsity swim team, which nobody really gave a shit about swimming anyway, so it didn't really matter. But I had some friends in the swim team, had some friends outside of the swim team in kind of different demographics, what have you. But so I was just kind of a nobody, really. But
I was in the band myself.
is that right?
Mm-hmm.
What'd you play?
Saxophone.
Skin flute?
Along with
There it
saxophone.
is. There it is.
Saxophone.
Yeah. See, I was the athlete, but I was a 3A school that if you wanted to be, you were the athlete.
Well, you've obviously kept the coolness up.
Oh, sure, and the build.
Yeah.
And the athletic build. Last book that you read.
So it's called Friction. It's a business book, basically.
Okay.
I just finished it. So I will say I typically read either business books or philosophy books or stoicism books, like nonfiction.
The Stoicism is really been fascinating.
Yeah.
It's this lost art of masculinity and what we've been.
Well, I
have
mean,
been
to me,
pulled.
I think it's irrespective of masculine or feminine. I think more than anything, it's a lot of the concepts in that book. I mean, it's constant reminders that human beings need to live a successful and happy life. I think, and to me, what's the most fascinating about reading really old, like if you do Marcus Aurelius's writings from back. I mean, that was right after Jesus's time in what was it, 50 AD, I think. Like some of the stuff that he wrote about. To me, the coolest part about that is it's like you have an ability to communicate. Granted, it's one way, but with people from thousands of years ago. Like to me, that's the most fascinating reading is shit that's really, really old of authors who have been gone for a long time. Yeah. The older, the better, really, because to me, like there's so many points in there that are so timeless and so applicable to our daily lives now and are applicable to human nature no matter what the time period is, that to me, like if that isn't a clear indicator, if that all the way back then they were dealing with the exact same fucking problems that we're dealing with now, and they had an answer for them back then, like why do we continue to reinvent the wheel and fuck things up and make the same mistakes over and over, like when you don't need to. You can look at so many lessons of history, and if you vow not to let them repeat themselves, I think we'd all be better off. So I love that stuff.
And then your favorite quote.
So similarly from Marcus Aurelius, in fact, I have it handy because it's that important to me. It's just so that I get it exactly right. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Which I think
who can't relate to that?
Yeah.
Which to me, the biggest takeaway from that, I think it's the simplest way to put that your mentality dictates everything. How you look at things is really everything, and that's really the backbone of Stoicism. Is that the events, the things that happen are irrelevant. How you allow yourself to respond because of what happens is everything.
Yeah.
Because if you can, I heard this on a recent interview I don't even remember who it was, but the gist of it was if you can be in a bad mood for no fucking reason, which everybody can, you can just as easily be in a good mood for no fucking reason, And so to me, that mentality of whether it's Marcus Aurelius or Epictetus or, whoever who's, redone the same fucking quote a million times over and is saying it now, is that the way that you interpret what happens to you dictates everything. You don't have to let anything bother you.
You have raised 2 daughters.
Yeah.
And quickly, what are their ages?
17 and 19.
Okay. All right. So
I'm
they
just behind you. I got 15-year-old twins.
And I have a 21-year-old. So we were going to talk about the joy of the teenage girl and raising her, and how that just seems to go smooth. Yeah. There's no up and downs with that.
The high school years have gotten really easy for me.
I do want to get to how you ended up. We talked about your Navy SEAL stuff and all these things. How did you get to this area? We know you live here in the area. How did you end up around here?
So when I got out, just basically we were looking for property all over the country, and we went to a few different regions looking at places, and we liked the Dallas area, and basically just did a couple of trips where we'd come here and go an hour each direction from Dallas and just look at property, and kind of settled on the eastern part first, and found a place and bought it. It was just wanting to move to Texas and liking this area. And
what was it about Texas that appealed to you?
There's a couple things. I mean, some of it's the weather. Not that the weather is great, but it's better than some places. It's centrally located. Excuse me, my throat's fucking is
That's all right.
dying on me. But state tax, culture was kind of commensurate with what we're about, and what's important to us, and it just all kind of made sense.
So you grew up in Iowa. We talked about that. I'm a big sports fan. Are you a sports fan? Do you follow anything? I'm growing up in Iowa. I wonder how much that affected it with no pro teams. You have two major colleges, or Iowa and Iowa State, right?
Yeah, I mean, so Iowa football is a bigger deal, or it's a big deal there. I mean, obviously there's plenty of states that have big college programs that are a huge deal in that state. But I enjoy sports, but similar to everything else in my life, I refuse to allow myself to be influenced negatively by a team not winning, or there's just no chance that I'm going to let the Cowboys fumbling at the last second and not going to a second playoff game. Like, I don't really give a shit. Like, would I like to see them win? Sure. Yeah. If they won a Super Bowl, would it be cool? Yeah. Do I really give a fuck? No, I don't. And so I take that approach really with all sports. I enjoy, respect, and appreciate the dedication that it takes to get to that level of anything. I enjoy watching competition, especially athletes that are in the prime of their careers compete. But that's it. It's an entertainment value, and that's as far as I will let myself get wrapped up into it. But
I catch myself now being older. I'm 57. And you talked about earlier about taking emotion out and not letting things affect you. And I've learned so much since then about, I used to live and die with the Cowboys. I still love them. I'm not going to lie. When they lose, I'm not super happy. But it doesn't bother me as close as it used to. Mainly because we're used to
work
it.
for a couple of days.
Yeah. But now that we're used to it for 25 years, you're like, that's the way it goes. Yeah. But and you try to convey this to I have two kids. I have a son and a daughter, 23 and 21, or 24. He just turned 24. And they get so wrapped up in stuff. And it's so ironic, and kind of ask you about this. You try to, and we have Holden Knowles over here, who's a young man going to be in the Marines soon, and he's excited to come here and hear you speak. The things that you realize are not that important that you try to convey to your kids or these younger people that get wrapped up in it. But then a part of me says, maybe you need to be wrapped up in it at that age to learn that it's not that important. I mean, what do you think about that?
I agree in that regard, in that two things. One, a lot of the things I talk about in that book and what I would consider lessons that I have learned are absolutely not things that I had when they were toddlers. And so much of how I think, how I feel, what's important and what's not is a byproduct of being a father of teenage daughters and going through certain phases of their life with my life, and how I tried to juggle that, and the mistakes that I made as they were younger. So much of how I feel now is in response to doing it wrong, or getting too worked up about dumb shit that doesn't matter, being harder on them than I should have been for things that, just like it doesn't matter. That's a two-way street, and that's a hard thing for parents to kind of reconcile, and I will be the first one to admit, myself included, and it took years of just getting my nuts slammed in a car door emotionally over things that they were doing or not doing, and me trying to battle that before I finally fucking realized it doesn't matter. It is that these are lessons, to your point, that they have to learn.
Yeah, and that's hard for a parent.
Well, and the severity and the seriousness of anything is in the eye of the beholder. It's very easy, and you learn this in dog training, like, I know what I'm trying to teach you. You have no fucking idea what I'm trying to teach you. It's my job to make you understand and communicate properly what I'm trying to teach you. If you don't, that's my fault. So as a parent, it's the same thing. I just think that it's like you only get this one chance, or even if you have 5 kids, like it's still like that's your one time to influence this person who 50 years from now is they're always going to be your son or daughter. You're always going to be their parent, and you're basically going to look at them as a byproduct of you. And so it's hard to not take everything fucking serious and overthink everything that they do. But at the end of the day, you have to just think, it doesn't fucking matter. I'm going to do the best of my ability with what I have at the time, and the rest of it's going to fucking shake out the way that it shakes out. And just like, like I said, we don't think it's a big deal. To them, it's a huge fucking deal.
Exactly.
Somebody breaking up with them. On the same token, something that, that they don't think is a big deal that we do realize, like they don't think not getting paid or losing a job or fucking something, like they don't give a fuck.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean anything to them. So that works both ways, and you got to just fucking do the best you can and not overthink everything.
And hearing you talk about, even being able to say, hey, I fucked up a lot on that. Resonated with me. There's a lot of, I still have a lot of guilt. I'll look at pictures when they were 5 or 7, and I was working so much, or I put myself into it so much.
Sure.
So to hear you say that, it's like, I think a lot of us dads juggling what we're trying to do, we're trying to provide.
And you do get to a point of, I'll never forget this. My son still to this day reminds me, he's a great kid. But one day I was frustrated. I forgot what it was, but he wasn't being tough enough about something. And I made a comment that, oh, man, I now know what it's like to raise 2 girls. I made that comment. Out of the top, to this day, he's like, that was the one that just
That's tough on a teenage boy.
It
right
is.
there.
And it wasn't teenage. He was younger than that. He was like 7.
And he's carried
And
it.
he still carried it. And it's a mistake on my end.
Yeah.
But that's also... maybe it had to happen, maybe it didn't, but it's me learning, it's him learning to, overcome these deals. You just don't know why, but it is a very difficult process.
A couple of the hot topics politically right now. There were some things you had in this book I wanted to read, especially there is something on immigration, and the way you wrote that, it was just so awesome. It was basically, let me see. It basically was like, if you're somebody that is against the wall, but you're a super wealthy person, and you've got walls and people carrying guns to protect you, you basically were like, fuck you.
Yeah.
And fuck you again.
It was like to me,
and that's
you're
really
a hypocrite of the highest order, and to me, if you're willing to do that, I don't care what you think. It's invalid. Like you're not walking the walk.
Well, you have a lot of them against guns, and they got their own security walking around, and they feel good because they don't have the gun, but they have guys that do.
Yeah.
It's chicken shit. I mean, it's the same thing with, people who think guns should be taken aren't the ones that would actually go try to take them.
Right.
Because same thing, like, so what you're saying is that I don't want Joe Blow to have a gun. I'm too big of a coward to actually go confront Joe Blow. I want this guy to put his life on the line to go take him from Joe Blow, and I want to make him do that. Like, you are a coward of the highest order, if that's you.
I'm against the death penalty, and I'm a conservative, but I'm against the death penalty, and a big part of it is I couldn't kill that guy. If they said you got to pull the lever or do whatever, I couldn't do it. So
could
I
you do it
somebody else to do
if
it.
your children were murdered? Could you do it?
I probably could then. Yeah,
so that's saying a lot, right there.
It is, but right now I am not, because I'm very I'm pro-life. I don't think about killing. I don't think we should be killing you if you're at 8,000 trimesters or whatever it is. And so that's where it's my deal. But a big part of it is I couldn't, and I always ask people that. Then you would go pull the lever, you would kill them. Well, no, I couldn't do it. Well, then it's a part of it. Now I know that there's different levels and all that, but that's a big thing to me. And the same thing with the guns or whatever. You got to put yourself in that spot. And I think even the immigration deal, I think sometimes I'm very much a wall guy, and we got to get this under control. But I think we forget about what these people are going through, a lot of them that are trying to get over here. And what policies can we do to help them get here in a legal way? I think sometimes we dehumanize people to make our point and to forget about it or whatever. And it's just a very complicated deal. But yeah, we definitely got to, have that wall up and keep people from just, walking over.
That'll happen. Mike, I've read a lot of Nietzsche. Whoever fights monsters should see to it that he does not become a monster. I thought about you in your battles, as you had to do what you had to do out there on the battlefield, and how that affected you. And as you fought monsters, you had to see to it in the process you didn't become a monster. Speak to that.
Well, it's a tough or tricky road to hoe for sure, and it's easy to get caught up in becoming what you're fighting for sure. Mm-hmm. And I think it requires a level of mindfulness and intentionality to see to it that doesn't happen. And it goes back to holding yourself as accountable as anybody else, is that you have to use that same metric of like, okay, we're not becoming who we're chasing by doing what we're doing, right? Mm-hmm. That question should be asked every time. But
to a level so much more than arguing or social media. You're out there with weapons.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a personal accountability. There are mechanisms in place to try to hold warfighters accountable, but sometimes you're in the middle of fucking nowhere with no cameras and no oversight and whatever. And to me, that's when it's the most important to do the right thing as it relates to, war crimes or things of that nature. Now, that doesn't mean that, people who, I would say deserve to be taken out of the gene pool don't mm-hmm. still deserve it. They do. But there's a way to do it, and a way not to do it. And I think, the Geneva Conventions are certainly not perfect. There's plenty mm-hmm. of flaws to them, but that as an example of kind of a consequence of World War II of saying like, hey, this was pretty fucking horrible. How can we prevent this from happening in the future? It's at least starting that conversation and being mindful enough to realize that we need to do something to make sure shit like that doesn't continue to happen.
Have you ever carried out any orders that you disagreed with, that you were concerned with?
No.
Okay.
No.
Do you see any of those people's faces in your nightmares or at night?
I don't have any nightmares. I don't have any issues sleeping.
You're clear.
I don't have a single objection to anything that I did or saw overseas. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I have no problems with mm-hmm. it.
Okay, you a big change in your career was at one point. I think you were in Iraq in 2003, Operation Iraqi Freedom, and this is when you first saw the military dogs in action.
Yeah,
and alerting the soldiers to booby traps, bombs, grenades, and all that. Kind of walk us through that if you can, and how that changed you.
Yeah, so I just I was always a big dog guy growing up, and when I was knee deep in the military and seeing how, because there were a number of occasions where I saw military working dogs being utilized in different capacities. I mean, even back right after the Cole bombing, there were explosive detection dogs in supply warehouses that were working pallets getting loaded onto USNS ships to resupply our warfighting ships, and then in Iraq, explosive detector dogs.
Sorry. Oh, there we go.
So seeing those dogs do what they do, was the light switch for me. I grew up with bird dogs and had always been a big dog guy, but seeing that kind of put it all together, where it was like all the things that I loved about dogs were now coupled with what I loved about the military and special operations, and that's it was that day basically where I decided this is what I want to do, for a living, and then just kind of dove headfirst into it.
If I remember right, I think it was in an interview that you were talking like, I can't believe that we're not using these dogs more.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there was a bomb dog that alerted on a booby trap. Basically, it was like a pressure switch kind of thing with a clump of grenades. I didn't see the actual dog indicate and wasn't standing right there when it happened. The area that we were in, it happened, in the area that we were in, and we heard about it. And that's where I was just like, I've seen these dogs work again in other capacities, actually watching them do it in person. But then, what clicked about that for me is it was like we've been in that same position a bunch of times and never had a dog with us. Why the fuck not? You know? And so from then I just was like, this is something we should be doing, and wanted to get involved.
Can you tell us about these Belgian Malinois?
Yeah.
What makes them so special?
I mean, I wouldn't say that. Well, let me take one step back. To me, the remarkable thing about them as a breed is really just the human standard that they've been held to. I mean, all dogs, every breed of dog is a byproduct of human beings messing with genetics. Mm-hmm. Malinois, I think, have just been the one breed. Malinois and Dutch Shepherds, which are very similar to a German Shepherd, just over the course of the last 50 to 100 years, have been watered down the least in terms of breeding for pet qualities or looks, or structure, show dog attributes, etc. They've been held to a higher standard from a working dog trait standpoint. And that's really all it is, because every breed of dog is a breed for a reason. And if you look at the AKC's Book of Dogs back from the early 1900s, and you look at the breed standard for every breed that exists that everybody's familiar with, it's very different from what you see soccer moms walking around the park. At this point, we kind of have the American domesticated pet dog with a bunch of different fucking paint jobs, and that's really all it is.
I've got a French bulldog that
we
may want to see if he could make it in the.
I don't think we need to waste our time with it. But I would say that about everybody.
Very athletic.
Yeah, but I'm sure he is. I would say that about just about everybody's dog in their backyard. Like, if it's a great house pet, it's probably a shitty working dog. On the transverse, if it's a really great working dog, it's probably a pretty shitty house pet, or one that's going to make you have to micromanage every second of that dog's life when they're in your house.
Have you been bitten?
I've been bitten a bunch. In fact, I was bit by one of our retired dogs 2 months ago, where his tooth broke off in my arm, and when he bit me, and I didn't know it. So I went and got sewed up, and after about 2 weeks, it abscessed and was all fucked up and infected and leaking cottage cheese looking shit. And so I went back in and they x-rayed it, and sure as shit, there's a chunk of tooth. I've got pictures of it.
What does that mean? What psychologically in the mind of a dog? Why would he do that?
Well, so, with a high charge working dog, and I will say, like, all the dogs we have at the Warrior Dog Foundation are in kind of a special category of at the very highest level of hard to deal with. These are dogs that, if they're at our facility, they've done the wrong thing enough times to where whoever had them entity-wise said, it's better for us, generally speaking, or overall, all things considered, this dog is too big of a liability, and we're going to put him to sleep.
Real quick, explain what the Warrior Dog project is.
So the Warrior Dog Foundation is a nonprofit that I founded back in 2010, and its sole purpose is to keep dogs that have served their country, whether it's law enforcement, military, whatever, from being euthanized because they temperamentally or bite history-wise have become a problem. So that's where we step in. If a unit's like, we're going to put this dog to sleep, we step in, we take them.
And I never knew that happened. I didn't know they would euthanize dogs for that.
Yeah, it doesn't happen often. Again, if you put yourself in that position where, you're overseeing a dog program, like, accidental bites happen, shit happens, accidents happen. But for a dog to do it over and over and over, where there's a pattern or a history, to the point where the unit's like, okay, this dude has medically retired one of our operators and put 3 of them in the hospital with serious injuries. Like, he is counterproductive. Like, he's a net negative to our unit having him here. We can't have it. Mm-hmm. That's when we step in and we take them.
But what are you trying to do with these dogs when you bring them into here? Like, where will they go?
Well, so first and foremost is, okay, they're not being put to sleep. So at a minimum, they can live out their life with dignity and grace in our facility and be a dog.
Okay, so they may not be going to somebody else or anything like that.
I would say in more cases than not, they don't.
Okay.
However, in some cases, we get a dog in that just needs some time to unwind, and we need to do some rehab with them and spend a few months or even, a year or more, and then can ultimately adopt them out to somebody who's equipped to be able to handle them and take them. So we have adopted out a number of our dogs, but a lot of them end up staying there for years and And
Do the dogs know when they're working with a unit? Do they know what they're doing? Like, do they know how dangerous it is? And that's what I'm assuming.
Well, let me take one step back. When it comes to the detector side, absolutely not. They're oblivious to the fact that they're searching for explosives. Now, when it comes to human odor, like when you see a dog, if you put them in search mode, if you will, or detector mode, you can, a good handler, a good trainer will be able to tell when that dog is snaking back and forth using his nose looking for, let's say it's explosives. If he comes in explosive odor, you'll know by how his body behavior, body positioning changes. If he comes in human odor, you'll also know. When that dog starts to have a change in behavior, his handler should be able to say, that motherfucker's in human odor, he's in explosive odor, really fast.
Wow.
When it's in human odor, that's a different story. They understand, and you can see it because detector mode, you'll see the tail start to feather like a hunting dog, sniffing really intense, moving up and down, trying to locate source, getting really excited. But their body exudes, excuse me, excitement. When they come in human odor, they stiffen up. Their tail goes straight up and a lot of times will arch over their back like a scorpion and stay there. Sometimes you'll see a little bit of their hair come up. They'll stiffen up and become bigger and they'll become really intense. And it's plain as day. Once you've seen it a few times and you've watched a dog, if you don't know what odor they're coming in and you see it, like, it becomes very easy and obvious to identify it. But so when they come in human odor, then there is that pucker factor of they know that they're about to get in a fight.
Oh, wow.
Or that they might get in a fight and they want to get in a fight. Genetically, they're just the funneled genes are such that that dog loves conflict and wants to go fucking bite somebody.
Do you train the cadaver dogs?
I have. It's not something I do much of, but
and that fascinates me too. The dogs that can kill you.
So the discipline with which dogs are detecting scent wise is irrelevant. Whether it's human remains, whether it's narcotics, explosives, bed bugs, cell phones, it doesn't matter. Like, to the dog, and that's the thing to your question, do they know? No. A dog only understands that whatever the target odor is that you've paired a reward with, that they're looking for.
They're going for a reward. Is that what?
Yeah, they're looking for whatever the target odor is because you're going to throw them a fucking ball or a tug or. Okay. So that's the whole reason they're looking for it. So you need a dog with really, really high prey and hunt drive. But that's it. They don't know that it's marijuana or C4 or hard drives. Or to them, it's a specific odor, and that's it. So
a question I've got is when these dogs come, especially back from battle and war and what they've seen and done, is there a sense of PTSD when they get back home?
So for some of them, there can be. It is a little different. I would say the symptoms are very similar in terms of, things will trigger them, but it's usually a stimuli. So it could be gunfire, it could be a helicopter, things that they've made a negative association with in combat. So some sort of stimulus is attached to a negative consequence enough times to where A plus B equals C with that stimuli. Similar to human beings, but human beings have the ability to rationalize it and think about it and have an internal monologue to try to reason their way through it, where obviously dogs don't. So the good news with that is, so if you think of it like a piggy bank, there's positive and negative coins. So there's a shit ton of negative coins with gunfire in this dog's mental piggy bank. So we're going to shove a bunch of positive coins in that dog's mental piggy bank in relation to gunfire. So you're going to pair it with positive associations over and over until you kind of override it.
So these are dogs that don't need to be adopted as pets in a lot of sense.
No, there are some of the dogs that have pet-like qualities and some of them who are very pet-like, but there's always an element that isn't, that you have to be mindful and respectful of.
And are there dogs that just aren't going to cut it? I'm assuming there are. That,
for sure.
That you just say, listen, he's just not.
Yeah, we get dogs in on a regular basis that, within...
quick.
Yeah, pretty much immediately, like this dog's probably going to be here forever, but that's okay. That's part of it.
You fly them in from...
Usually the handler
Belgium?
brings them and drops them off.
Okay.
When we import...
you don't go to the airport and pick them up?
For dogs that I'm importing, yes. The warrior dog side, no. Like whoever the unit is, they'll come bring the dog and drop them off. But if I'm selling dogs to police or personal protection or whatever, yes, I usually import them from Europe. I have to go pick them up from the airport and bring them in that way.
When you train them, it's Tricos Team Dog is what we're talking about here, right?
Tricos International is the dog side. Team Dog is the online training and food.
I gotcha.
Tell us about this dog food.
So it's just, we've been doing it for 3 years now, and it was a byproduct of finding a really good dog food, feeding it for a few years. It grows, and then some big brand comes and buys them out. Basically buys the customer base, changes the formula, the food goes to shit, and now we're back to square one. I got tired of doing that over and over with all these different brands that when they first started, they were little mom and pop, really high-end, very high-quality foods that 3 years later are bought by, whoever, and now it sucks. And so, I was like, you know what, I'm going to find a manufacturer, I'm going to build a formula exactly how I want it, and we're going to sell it and keep it that way. So,
how can people find it?
Just team, like if you go, you can search my name. You can go, to Mike Ritland Company, or just Team Dog. .pet is the online training and any of the food, treats, supplements, etc.
Could this turn my French bulldog into a warrior?
You can. The food will help.
I told Allison, if Mike comes to the house, lock that dog up, because I've heard you say a shitty acting dog is only a reflection of its owner.
Well,
so I was like, do not let him see that dog jump all over him.
Yeah, to a certain extent, yes. It's a reflection of how important that dog being well behaved is to you.
See, my 2 girls and my wife treat it like a baby.
Yeah. And
baby,
so you're blaming
talk
them.
it. Well, maybe I do too.
Yeah. I was going to say, I'm seeing you. If you wear Patriot Paws, do you know Patriot Paws? Okay. Is it kind of a similar process? Obviously, yours is a little bit, a lot more intense. Patriot Paws, for those that don't know, are dogs that help disabled veterans.
Yeah, no, ours
that
are
can't
totally
do things.
different.
It's
a totally different mission set. We don't provide service dogs to help combat veterans. Our singular focus is to retire former either military or police working dogs that would be euthanized if we didn't take them. So it's just, it's a totally different wheelhouse. But.
Okay, hearing all these things you've done, crazy stuff you've done, what's something that scares you? What scares you? Like, you're like, man, I don't want to deal with that, or I don't want to do that, or I want to see that.
Really nothing.
That must be nice.
Well,
it's not the water. We know that.
Well, no, again, like to me, it's going back to that stoicism thing. It's like it's not that there aren't things that would be easy to allow them for me to be fearful of them, but I'm just not going to be. Like, I'm not going to allow myself to be. It doesn't mean that there isn't dangerous shit.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean there isn't shit that could take my life in an instant, but I'm not going to worry about it, because I think it's pointless and it's counterproductive.
Oh, man. See, I can't be in a room with a clown, and I can't do it.
If you had never gone into the military, you would be a completely different man than you
For
are
sure,
right now.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
100%.
Probably a graphic designer.
Maybe.
Maybe a loan officer.
if I'm lucky, maybe.
But now I want to show something here. This is old, and you've done so much media, from ABC, CBS, Fox News, CNN, everything. Yeah. But this, and it's old. We've all seen it. It went viral. But I love it.
Yes,
I love
we
it.
have to go
So
here.
this is back. You have to remember the time, maybe 2019. This was could Epstein really have killed himself, or did he,
Yeah.
Anyway, so you were on Fox News.
Yeah.
This was new.
Jesse Waters, right? Was it
Jesse Waters.
Yeah.
And it just, the look on Jesse's face. And I want to hear the story of how this turned out.
Who's to your left there, and I'm sure he's ready to go out on the next mission, and he can't wait. So thank you, and thank Nero for your service. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. If I could I throw a PSA out real quick?
Real quick.
Just the remarkable nature of these dogs and them being highlighted in the news creates a huge demand by people that frankly shouldn't have them. If you see the coverage and you decide I want one of these dogs, either buy a finished trained, fully trained and finished dog from a professional, or just don't get one at all. And Epstein didn't kill himself.
All right. Okay. Thank you for that commentary. All right, Mike, maybe more on that later.
So when that finished, what did the fox guy say? What happened after?
I mean, it was pretty quick after that. He just said, "Do you know something I don't know?" And I said, "No." I was like, "I was just fucking
common
with you."
sense. Yeah.
I was like, "I was just fucking with you." That's really all it was. Like, it wasn't something that I planned or had thought of.
It just came up.
Well, sort of. So, on the way in, they sent a car for me, and it was like rush hour. I went into the Dallas studio. So I was sitting in the back of this car being driven there, listening to, I think it was Fox News, the radio. They were talking like the whole fucking time about the Epstein thing. So it was just kind of fresh in my mind. And during the interview, I like Jesse Waters, but like at that time he had Waters World. He wasn't on the 5. He didn't have his own show yet. And so his segment on Saturdays was kind of a gaffe a little bit. Like he didn't take a lot of it serious, or a lot of times, and I see him still do that, where he'll bring somebody on and interview him, and it's more of him just fucking with them than it is a serious interview, and that's kind of how it felt, and it fucking irritated me, frankly, is that he was asking dumb questions that I thought were beneath what we were talking about. Like, we're talking about a Tier 1 special operations working dog running in on a guy who blows himself up with a suicide vest to avoid being bitten by the dog, and he's like cracking jokes about fucking dumb run-of-the-mill house training crap or whatever, and it just, like, I got the feeling like he just didn't give a shit, wasn't taking it serious or whatever, and so that's really all it was. I just was like, I'm gonna fuck with him.
It was greatness.
Oh,
Did your phone blow up?
It did, and when, to his credit and to Fox's credit, we filmed that 2 days prior to when it was released, so they didn't have to keep that in, and they did.
That's great.
Which was pretty good.
So something else you've got, Mike, that's super successful is your podcast, Mic Drop.
Yeah.
Which I love watching. It's great. But
real quick, as a graphic designer, I want to say a couple things. First of all,
oh, you're a graphic designer?
I know.
We didn't know.
I know. That's why I'm pointing this out.
Third time to try.
But yes, exactly. I want to remind everybody, cueballdesign.com.
And it's very similar to being a Navy SEAL, as you've
Exactly.
explained.
I already discussed that, how we're on the same level. The logo's outstanding. The Mic Drop logo is super
The
cool.
production is
Yeah,
outstanding. Oh
but
my
you got the
gosh.
what is it? The
Trident.
yeah, it's in there. It's just a really cool production, graphics, everything, outstanding. I just wanted to,
It is
a lot of times I look at stuff, I'm like, oh, I could do better. No, they've done great. It's really good.
I really enjoyed the last episode. The lady, the intelligence.
Secret Service
My
lady. Yeah,
gosh.
yeah.
Wow.
The Greek from Greece, and her parents from Greece and all that. Yeah, that was really very interesting. The way she grew up, very poor, and dealt with all these things, and it was really good.
You have had millions of streams.
Yeah.
And we're coming up on 100 streams, I think. So we and we were saying, but between what's going on at this table, as fellow podcasters, we have collectively had millions of views.
Yeah.
So
It's impressive.
No need to divvy it up or worry about who's done what.
Yeah.
Let's just say millions.
millions, at this table.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to bring this up. I found it fascinating. I saw this on. Is it Sean Ryan?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, he's doing some crazy stuff with these. Did you watch the one where the guy that can leave his body?
I didn't, but
Wow, he's into all these kind of mystical lately, and it's just crazy. But I saw in there he said that you speak. Tell me the name of this language in the Northern African. The language, yes, the language you learned.
Tagalog.
Tagalog, yeah.
That's
Tell me about this.
That's just Filipino, but
Okay.
yeah, it's. I mean, I don't know why they don't call it Filipino and they call it Tagalog, but
I was thinking it was an African country.
yeah, and it's actually, I would say it's related to Spanish. So there, in fact, some of the words are the exact same. So there's, and I took Spanish in high school, but the backstory on that is that one of my reenlistments, I reenlisted for Arabic school, and they agreed to it. So they put it in the contract. I was all, slated to go to Arabic school, and then this reshuffling of commands came about, and they said, well, you guys are going to Southeast Asia now instead of the Middle East, because there was a lot of Al-Qaeda affiliates in the Philippines at that time. Down in the south in Mindanao, there was the Abu Sayyaf and Moro Islamic Liberation Front, which is MILF for short, which was pretty awesome.
That's great.
But which they had no idea, but which we all got a kick out of. It's just like hardline religious terrorist group, and their fucking name's MILF.
The MILFs.
They probably say "I love MILF" and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's get some shirts made up. But,
That would be great.
but anyway, so they said, hey, you're not going to CENTCOM, you're going to Southeast Asia, so we're going to send you to Tagalog instead of Arabic. So I was like, well, that kind of sucks. But so I spent about 6 months learning Tagalog, 8 hours a day, all day, every day, and
Which is
with a handful of
fast.
other guys, and then we ended up spending about 2 months in the Philippines, where the bitch of it was like pretty much all Filipinos speak English also, so there was really no reason, there's no necessity for me to learn it, whereas Arabic would have been
very helpful.
would have been more helpful because we ended up going to Iraq anyway. So yeah, it was kind of a kick in the dick, but that's
Yeah.
the military for you.
I had a buddy in the Army who had to learn Russian really fast.
Yeah.
And he learned it extremely fast. So how does the military do this in this intensive?
It's just total immersion. I mean, it's like with anything else. So they'll bring in an instructor that's a native speaker who also is, English as a second language, but it's as good as you or I would speak it. And it's all day, every day, for 3 or 4 hours in the morning, 3 or 4 hours in the afternoon, and they'll speak, in that language. And I mean, you have to fucking learn it, So I mean, they are good about kind of the methodologies that they use, doing different exercises and learning enunciations and conjugations and things like that. But to me, you could pick anything, and if you're doing it 8 hours a day, every day for 6 months straight, you're going to get good at it. Like, I mean, no matter what, So,
How'd you come about starting the podcast? What got you started on that?
so when the first book came out back in 2013, and I was really fortunate in that 60 Minutes did their piece on me at the same time. So, like, my book and the 60 Minutes special came out within a week of each other, and it just kind of catapulted me into this weird book signing, book tour, media tour kind of limelight, where for the next really couple of years, because I had several books come out, over the next few years, where people would have me come do speaking engagements or fundraising events, or speak at events or what have you, and I would, from those, a lot of times be invited on other interviews or other podcasts, and I just kept getting messages saying like, hey, I saw you on such and such show, and you were my favorite guest, and I think you would be a really good podcast host. Have you ever thought about starting your own show? And for a while I was like, no, I don't want to fuck with that, But just after a while, enough people kind of said, hey, you should think about doing this. I was like, well, fuck it, I'll give it a shot. So I started with just one camera angle in my living room of the ranch house out where the kennel's at, and for about a year did it out there, and it gained enough success and popularity in that year to get a couple of sponsors, and so then I decided I need to get an actual studio space, and found one in North Dallas for a little while, for about a year, and then at that time I was looking for a place closer to where I live. And it took a while, but once I found this place, opened up, and had to do some remodeling and shit, but ultimately found an ideal spot that's pretty close to where I live, and the rest is history. But
How do you decide what guest you have on there?
it's a combination. I mean, at this point, like, the show's big enough and is done well enough to where I get a lot of people like that their PR people or their agents, will email in and say, hey, I've got a guest with a book coming out, or, that's doing this speaking circuit or whatever. I get plenty of people that just message me or either message me on some social media platform, which I don't run, by the way. So for people that message in, if you get a response, it's usually not going to be me. There are some exceptions, but most of the time it's one of my staff members. But
Is that one of my 18 texts trying to bug you?
possibly, yeah. I mean,
I'm
like,
sure you were like,
That was
No,
my next
this
question.
guy-
How much has Jay beaten you down to finally get
I
you
didn't
here?
let
well,
it.
no. I mean, so for me, like, the further it goes, the more I try to remove myself from from having to interact with anybody.
You've got to do that, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like it gets. It got to the point where it was like all day, every day, I'm having to fucking respond to people and interact with people, and I just got to a point where I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. Not that I can't do it, I'm not going to do it anymore. And so, I've got people that manage social media, my email accounts, I mean, you name it, like, and I continue to kind of further isolate myself that way, just because it's one thing to do that while you're building something and you're trying to get something off the ground. Once it gets to a point where it's kind of self-sufficient, then I think it's important and really necessary to take a step back and have somebody else do it so that you can maintain the protection of your time to a certain extent. Because if I interacted with everybody that sent me a message on social media, on email, text message, whatever, like I would be doing this all day long, every day, and I still wouldn't keep up with it. So
what's it like getting noticed at the airport and stuff?
It'll never not be weird.
Because they think they know you, kind of.
Yeah, well, I mean, they know way more about me than I know about them, so it is kind of weird that way. And it's not like it happens all the time, but it happens often enough to where it's a thing, I guess.
Yeah.
But to me, like every decision that I've made in my entire life has put me sitting right here, right now. So for me, like, I'm never going to bitch about anything as far as that stuff goes, or belittle, anything like that, because I'm very grateful and I feel really fortunate to have the support that the show has got over the years. And it's all about the guest, I've had some really, really great guests on that have made my job really easy. Back to your question, it's a combination of either they email in, somebody will message me, either email or private message, and say, hey, I've got a guest suggestion, it's so-and-so, here's a little fucking blurb on them or whatever. But then I also have a couple people that look for potential guests and try to book them that way. So it's a mix.
Do you have a area that you want to stay in? Because a lot of them I know are you got Secret Service, you have a lot of military people and all. Is that something that you're more comfortable in, or are you open to any guest?
I'm open to any guest, but I'm not naive to the fact that every episode is a product. Mm-hmm. And the reality of it is that of the people that subscribe to the channel, most of them want to see former either military, law enforcement, something like that. And so it's not even that I have a preference for it, it's that that's what most people want, and so that's mostly what I do. I do go outside that realm on a regular basis. I would like to do more of that, kind of outside of that wheelhouse, but again, to me, and I'm never going to compare myself to a fucking rock star, because I'm by all means not, but it's kind of like Aerosmith or Metallica or bands that have been around for a while, like whatever they got popular with, a lot of times they're like, well, we're tired of doing that, so we're going to do this funky reggae weird fucking shit that everybody's like, dude, that's fucking terrible.
Never works.
Stop ruining the classics. Like, we like you because of what you do. Like, stop ruining it.
The worst thing you can hear is like, we're going to play a bunch of stuff from our new album. No, I'm not here for the new album.
You're Metallica. We're here to hear Enter Sandman and all the shit that we heard in high school.
Like, so. if you had an athlete on, you're the people who watch your show are going to be like, what the fuck?
I mean, like, it's just not going to do that well. There's going to be people that tune in no matter who's on. But, the shows that get millions of views are, guys that were either SEAL Team 6, Delta Force. Like, one guy I had on fairly recently was a SEAL and then went into the Foreign Legion. It's shit like
the French guy?
Well, he's not French. He's an American.
But he went to the...
So
that was great.
Yeah, he was a SEAL for a while and then got kicked out and went to Hawaii for a short period and then was like, fuck this, I'm going to fly to France and knock on the French Foreign Legion door, and did that for 5 years. And,
that was cool.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, it's got like 2.3 million views, and it's been out for, 60, 70 days, something like that.
Who would be a guest you really want to have you haven't had?
I'd love to have George Bush, W. I'd love to have him on. That'd be neat, because I was on active duty as a SEAL for his entire 8-year administration.
Yeah.
And just, I have a lot of reverence and respect for him. I'm not saying he's perfect. There's things that I disagreed with, but I would be honored and love to be able to interview him. Barack Obama, honestly, anybody that's a high-level politician, I'd like to have on and ask them things that no other fucking guy will ask them.
Yeah. And that's kind of where we're on a much smaller scale. That's our deal here, is that we want to ask questions that people want to be, ask people that we have.
Sure.
And we had John Ratcliffe here, the director of national intelligence. Okay, we just want to know who killed Kennedy, where's all these things that people want to. Now, he can't tell us, but we've asked it,
Oh, he wouldn't leak anything about the
No,
aliens.
he can't, but it was fun. It was fun. But so that's interesting. So you'd like to have the presidents or,
high level politicians would be fun. For me, like just purely from the people I want to interview. There's a channel on YouTube called Soft White Underbelly. I don't know if you've heard
love
of it.
that.
Yeah. I love a lot of those interviews. Those are people I would love to interview.
Yeah.
Now, what is that? I don't know that show.
I mean, it's really random. So it's like it could be a Chinese mafia member,
A lot of
a
meth
fucking
addicts.
a meth addict, a fucking hooker, a hacker.
Wow.
Shit that you're like, holy fuck, like shit that movie characters are made about.
And he just lets them talk.
Yeah, and
they
like you
spill
never
it
see
out.
him. They're sitting on like a stool in like this black and white kind of setting, and he just like
Oh, that's great. I
lets
need
them
to get on
open up.
this.
And,
Yeah, I
they're,
love
that
they're
stuff.
great.
The
But,
Appalachian family.
yeah, I mean, you
Yeah.
name it. Like just fascinating people. I mean, to
Yeah.
me, that's what makes an interview good. Is if the character is fascinating and they're good at storytelling, like that's a recipe for success. Without that, like I've had interesting people that weren't good at storytelling, and it doesn't do that well. On the transverse, I've had people that didn't have that great of a story, but were really animated and charismatic.
And they draw you in.
Yeah,
I think it's like a comedian when you see them, they do great, and then you try to tell the same thing, and you're not doing it justice because they know how to tell the story. They know how to
much
do
of it is in the delivery.
in delivery.
I wanted to end this by reading. Like I said, I love this book. You guys, if y'all have not picked up Unfuck America, get down and purchase Unfuck America.
Yeah,
It's
do it.
awesome. It really is. But I wanted to end it. But I feel like this is so poignant in where we are right now. You said change starts with us. We must strive to wake up every day and be the common person who chooses to do uncommon good. We won't be perfect. We'll make mistakes, but we're faced with thousands of micro decisions a day, and we have the ability to choose right over wrong. Do the right fucking thing, even when no one is looking. Don't just choose the fun, easy thing. Choose the hard, necessary thing. Spotlight, commend, and uphold others who do the same. If and when you get the chance to place someone in front of a camera on the cover of a magazine or in a position of power, let it be the right person. Vote for them. Tell others about them and share their content on social media. Rather than promoting celebrity gossip or fringe sporting events, bring good people and worthy acts into the spotlight.
Mm-hmm.
That's big.
Well, I appreciate it. I mean, to me, the big takeaway is, and what you see with a lot of people is, you hear, this is what's wrong with this country, and then they're pointing the finger at somebody else not doing what they think they should be doing. And I would just say anybody who starts anything off with, this is what's wrong with this country, is flip that finger back around at yourself before you do that and say, are you doing every fucking thing you can to be a net positive member of this society? Like, it starts there. If everybody does that, collectively our nation is 1,000 times better off. Stop worrying about what everybody else is doing and focus in-house. Get your own shit in order first.
Do you? And I always go back to it's the small things. A lot of it,
For sure it
is,
is.
and it's the little things. It's when the person needs help here or whatever. Go help them. Don't just blow it off. You talked about do the right thing, and I think a lot of people. It's social media really drives me crazy. And what do you think about social media and what it's done as far as the way we act towards each other?
Well, to me, social media is a tool the same way a gun is a tool. Social media can only be as evil as the people using it. So it's easy, again, to say social media is the problem, ban it. It's like social media doesn't do anything without us using our thumbs fiddle fucking with it. So like you've got to look at society as a whole. Like that's where the issue is. It's with people. And it's from people, again, like being too worried about what the fuck everybody else is doing and not worried enough about, hey, what are you doing? Like, how do you spend your day? How much of a percentage of your day goes towards actually being productive and not selfish or not judgmental or, fucking vengeful or whatever, jealous? I mean, you name it. It's like, so, to me, social media is, it can be a phenomenal tool, or it can be incredibly fucking detrimental to people's mental health. But it's only going to do what you allow it to do. It's going to be good if you focus on that. It's going to ruin your fucking life if you let it. The same way drugs do, the same way anything does. So.
I think you look at anything that's been invented when social media was created, or a gun was, they were all for good. Majority of things we built or made or invented were for good, and it's us that turns it into these terrible things. And I think that's a great point.
AI may be the next one to go.
Yeah,
well,
it's
again,
how we use it.
Yeah, I mean, it's what you do with it, and how you integrate it into your life. And I think if you keep everything at arm's distance and don't allow any one element of any part of your life that's external get too big or unruly or influential, that's a good step in the right direction.
Man, I can't thank you enough for joining us.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
This has been
Happy to do
huge
it.
for us. We're trying to kickstart this thing, and you taking the time to come over here to the shack and hang out with us. Really appreciate it.
Happy to do it.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having me.
All right, we'll see you all next time.
Amen.
Thank you.